All right, I'll ask the first question for the table. Please discuss your position on the planned June referendum to fund capital projects, including the Rodney Stormwater Pond Park.
Yep. So I'm extremely concerned about the referendum. Number one is that residents don't have the information about what the referendum may or may not include. And frequently cited is a provision in the charter that if council votes to hold a referendum, it has to occur not less than 30, but no more than 60 days from the vote. The problem is that we're ignoring step one that's in the charter, which is the council is to propose a resolution that specifies the amount to be borrowed, the purpose for which it's to be borrowed, and all other pertinent details about that borrowing, interest rates and things like that. That triggers a discussion and a feedback period, and then if they move forward and vote in the affirmative to move forward with the referendum, then that triggers the 30 to 60 day window. I'm concerned because this is a council that's held plenty of special meetings and workshops and things like that to discuss all manner of issues, which are certainly good, but my concern is that we're holding a lot of workshops and things like that, but we don't have any meat to the discussion. There's no actual numbers and anything like that, particularly for the bulk of the 2/3 of the referendum that are projects outside of the Rodney complex. So I'm extremely concerned that we're kind of hurtling towards a June 19th deadline without all the information.
Do we have any control over the time schedules of those trains?
What made you decide to run for this office?
So as I mentioned, I've always we love living here. We love being part of the community, and I think that I have a unique resume to bring to the table, a unique skill set. So I think I could be a service to the residents of District 30.
Just why in this particular form as a candidate?
Like I said, I think it would be. I think I would bring something to the table in terms of a skill set that would be beneficial to council.
Okay.
My name's Bob Bell. I'm from South Ridge Community on West Chestnut Hill Road. In regards to stormwater runoff, what is your position as far as new development that would impact that particular segment of, say, green space?
Sure. This is about the townhome.
The townhome development there. It's like 9.8 or 9.9 acres of forest land that if it gets wiped out, then there's nowhere for that water to go down there.
Sure.
And that's not just for our community. I mean, this is going to affect everyone around us as well.
So with respect to that particular project, first and foremost, I'm glad that the developer wants to annex into the city. And the reason I'm glad is because it shows the value of our city services, whether it's water and sewer, or whether it's trash pickup or anything else. It also means that decision based on about what happens on that piece of property can be made here in Newark, as opposed to if it was developed in the county, that decision would be made over in Newcastle. And people from Middletown and North Wilmington and everything else would have just as much say as we would over what happens. Under state code, you can't make the stormwater runoff problem worse based on statewide legislation. My understanding, and I'm not as familiar with that site, is there is an existing stormwater concern, and I also understand that modeling of what the site might look like after development isn't I understand the concern that modeling might not predict necessarily the ultimate end use of it. But I do think through working with the developer, through working with our engineering team in Public Works and Water Resources, there would be some compromise that could potentially be reached that would help bring that property on the city of Newark tax rolls at you know, and help broaden our tax base by a little bit, and not exacerbate the stormwater concerns that you have. And you know, potentially if there's some opportunity to locate some type of stormwater facility there, it might even mitigate some of that. That would be some of the concerns that you have. That would be ideal.
Anybody next? I'll ask a question. Parking is frequently seen as an issue in Newark. What are your views on parking waivers for new projects, or what ideas do you have for managing parking in your district and in downtown?
Sure. District 3 doesn't have too many parking troubles. You know, certainly the parking shop would have generated a parking waiver. I think the parking waiver system, from a broad sense, makes a lot of sense. In an urban environment, it prevents a disjointed situation where you have 5 parking spaces for this business and 10 for this business and 20 for that business, and you end up with a lot of wasted space that could be developed to some higher and better use. And you end up with an inconvenience to people who just want to shop in one place or another and don't want to worry about their car getting towed out of business X's parking lot. In terms of parking supply, as I mentioned in my comments in the Newark Post, I'm concerned we spent an inordinate amount of time and money studying downtown parking, and we went so far as to get RFPs for a parking garage, one of those RFPs was to build a parking garage at no cost to the city. Why didn't we pull that thread a little bit more? If there was one proposal, maybe if we had reissued the RFP, there would have been an even better deal to be had. So I think there's options out there that don't have to fall on the backs of the taxpayers, but could really benefit all of us when we want to eat, shop, and enjoy downtown.
They do. So the planning department runs those meetings.
I'm going to go again. Okay. Question. What quality of life factors would you prioritize when deciding whether to approve new development projects or rezoning for higher density development? That's an interesting question.
Sure. I think it really depends on the development. I mean, District 3 has so many diverse neighborhoods, and different neighborhoods have such their own character. And so I think it's important to consider the character of that particular area. I mean, Southridge is very different from Arbor Park across the street, is very different from, you know, where I live and Abbotsford and things like that. So I think considering the context and the history of the area is important, and really just making sure that our development patterns make sense to suit the broadest part of the community.
Is not development ever an option?
Definitely number one. Parking, traffic, growth.
It's certainly an option. I mean, that's the option that's being considered with the Rodney property, which is the city is considering purchasing the property at some price that would result in it not being developed. I think there's a lot of legal property rights issues if we were to just tell people that they can't develop on the property that they own. So I think we need to understand that people have a right to use their property in some way, but it's the classic, your right to do something extends only so far as negative impacts to somebody else. So it's a matter of balancing those things, balancing the rights of the property owner and the rights of adjacent and further out property owners.
We had a question last time about student.
The university's going to expand like 30% over 10 years, and that's going to impact Newark. There's two things I don't understand why they're doing it when brick and mortar is dead. People are going to longest learning in other parts of the country. Sister-in-law, that's how she got her degree. But it's affecting us negatively. People can't afford to buy houses here. it's affecting the water quality, cutting down trees. They don't seem to have a lot of regard for us.
So,
The question is,
Yeah, is there any way we can influence, their growth and help it impact us? They seem to own too much of New York.
I think having an open line of communication with the university is important, but by the same token, there's limits to how much influence the city can exert over the university as a state chartered, essentially private institution. Certainly the impacts on the city of increased population density need to be considered. Ideally, they would house however many students they have, but the trend nationwide is towards more off-campus housing.
But it's not even that, it's long distance learning, so I'm surprised they're going that route.
Well, I think,
More is becoming unacceptably expensive.
yeah, I mean, I don't
They're
want
gonna
to,
work themselves out of the business if they continue going there, but we can't influence that, they have to
Yeah.
figure that out themselves.
as for the business decisions that the university makes, that's something that we have limited impact, limited influence over. What we do have influence over is some of the decisions that are made when it comes to housing the students in the community. You hear frequently that there's 6 and 8 bedroom or 4 bedroom apartments that are being built, and I think some modification to our regulations that would encourage the building of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, that if and when the university does scale back in terms of its student body, would be more readily convertible to housing for the rest of us, would make